You guys, how you been? I missed you. It's been like a year since I've talked to you since my last video, and a lot has changed in that past year, not just in the overall EV industry here in the US, but also in my own personal garage. If you're looking around, you probably already have an idea of what some of those changes are. So today I want to catch you up on what I've been driving, why I landed where I did, and then also round it out by talking about a new charging adapter that solves a real world problem that I've been having since switching up my garage here. Maybe solves that same problem for you if you've made a change recently or are considering buying your first electric vehicle. So stay tuned for that. And if you're new here, my name's Blake. It's nice to meet you. This is Blake Check. This channel has always been about real EV ownership, not press cars, not hype, just my honest perspective, as an average consumer, EV enthusiast, nerdy family man, buying and driving cars here in the US automotive industry. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, grab a snack, maybe sit down, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the garage update because I think that kind of mirrors what's been happening in the EV space overall. I sold my dream car, my Tesla Model 3 Performance Stealth Edition. The really only thing that I'm excited about with regards to selling that car is that I won't have to keep saying that tongue twister every single time I feature that car on this channel. But otherwise, I still think it's one of the most important EVs ever made, the Tesla Model 3 Performance and some of the other early Teslas that were made. It's a great vehicle. It's got great efficiency, great software, as most of you guys know. It has unrivaled autopilot and driver assistance features. I just think it wasn't the right fit for me and my family anymore. For one, it was a sedan. It was a pretty big and spacious sedan compared to other cars in that segment, but it just didn't have enough cabin space, especially when you throw a car seat in the back seat of that car. Just like with many other sedans, there's not a whole lot of room for whoever is sitting in front of a car seat like that. So I had to switch into something bigger. To be completely honest with you guys, I'm not a big fan of SUVs or trucks or really any car with a big footprint. I know the US automotive industry has been going in that direction for a long time, but I never really bought into that. My personal preference is for a car that's as small and compact as possible, that optimizes cabin room, cargo area, while offering still just a tight, nimble driving experience. So when I started shopping for something to replace the Model 3, I looked for something that did a good job balancing that fun, tight, nimble driving experience that the Model 3 offered me, but with the additional practicality that I needed out of a family car. So the 4 electric vehicles that made my short shopping list were ones that met those criteria at the most affordable price possible. That being the Tesla Model Y, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6, and the Polestar 2. Now I'm sure looking in front of you here, you can determine which of those 4 vehicles I decided to go with. That's right, of course, it's the Polestar 2, not this car. I owned the Polestar 2 for a grand total of 2 months. It drove great. It felt solid. It looked fantastic. In fact, I think the Polestar 2 is the best looking electric vehicle in this kind of like middle area segment where it's like not quite a sedan, not quite an SUV. But the tech in the Polestar 2 just felt subpar, especially compared to what I was used to with the Tesla Model 3, and the cabin was a lot tighter than I wanted long term. So after just a couple months, I sold that car and, yes, leased this 2024 Kia EV6 Light Long Range. Now, the reason we decided to go with the Kia EV6 over the other 2 alternatives is because, for one, we'd already had 3 Teslas by that time. We had my Model 3 Performance, but we also had a Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive for a short time, as well as the OG Tesla Model S60 that some of you guys might remember if you've been following along for a really long time. And so I decided to try something new, something other than the Teslas that I'd become so familiar with. I'm an EV enthusiast, as you guys know, I'm a nerd, and so with all the cool, affordable options on the EV market today, I just wanted to branch out a little bit and try something different. And the Kia EV6 has really impressed me. It's efficient, it's comfortable, it's practical, and I think it looks pretty good. It kind of has like a hot hatchback type of vibe. It's much bigger than your traditional hatchback, but it still offers the same hatchback practicality and styling that I really enjoy. Kia really nailed that balance of a fun driving experience while offering a comfortable, spacious cabin and practical cargo space. As far as the purchasing experience for this Kia EV6, I thought that went pretty well. I'll give a shout out to Tempe Kia. They did a really good job of finding me a good example at a reasonable price. Again, this is the Kia EV6 Light Long Range. There are many other variants along that spectrum. This is kind of right in the middle where this car offers really good range without sacrificing too much on the tech. And again, I did lease this vehicle. I don't own it. I managed to get in on some of those year-end lease deals as they were trying to clear out their 2024 inventory in order to make room for the new 2025 model year that has the updated front fascia, has the new NACS port on the back as opposed to the CCS charging port that this car has. In addition to that, the new 2025 model year has a slightly bigger battery and I think is a little bit more efficient, so it offers a little more range. But this car in this configuration I think gives me about 310 to 320 EPA estimated range on a full charge. I'm seeing, especially since I'm doing mostly city driving, that I'm getting range estimates closer to 400, which is crazy. I know that's not realistic if you're doing combined or mostly highway driving, but it is still kind of cool to see that number on the digital gauge cluster while I'm driving. And speaking of which, I'll let you guys take a peek inside the car while I'm talking. It's a pretty handsome interior, if I do say so myself. It's got black cloth and leather seats, and the digital gauge cluster works pretty well. It's fully expansive from the driver's digital gauge cluster over into the infotainment screen there in the center. It does only have wired CarPlay, but if you use an adapter like this, you can get around that pretty easily. I don't know what this one's called or what the manufacturer of this one's called, but it's worked pretty well for me so far. It only cost me like 20 bucks, so I'll put the link in the description for this. They're not a sponsor or anything. I just haven't had any issues with it, so if you're looking for something similar to it, that'll be linked below. But the real benefit of this car, the main reason that I ended up buying it, was for this back here. The rear cabin area of this car is one of the best that I tested. The rear seats recline back even further. This isn't the farthest back setting. The rear seat passengers still have plenty of legroom here. This is a ton of space. This is my normal driving position here. Or you know what? Hold on. This is actually in the easy entry mode. If I press this button here, the seat will slide forward a few inches to my saved driving position. So yeah, anybody that's sitting behind your 5'10", 5'11", slightly above average short king will have about a foot, maybe 2 feet of legroom. And over there, as you can see, we have the car seat installed, and the front passenger has quite a bit of legroom up there too. So that was a main point of contention for most of those cars that I was shopping for in this segment. Whenever you install a car seat, typically the person that's sitting in front of that suffers in terms of legroom, and that was not the case in this car, and was the main reason we decided to pull the trigger on this one in particular. Real quick, I'll give you guys an opportunity to take a look at the rear cargo area. This cargo area isn't class leading. I'll put the actual specs on the bottom of how big it is. There's kind of like a second floor that I took out in order to maximize the space back here. It's plenty big enough to hold most strollers. That's, again, something I tested as I was looking at these cars. It has these inserts for a retractable shade that I actually purchased on Amazon. It did not come with the car. It has some subfloor storage, not a ton, not like the Tesla Model 3 and Y. Both of those electric vehicles beat out this car in that aspect. Again, my choice to go with the Kia EV6 is not a knock against Tesla Model 3 or Y owners. If you guys own those cars, you're doing pretty well. You're beating out this car in just about every single aspect on paper. Speaking of which, we have the lack of a frunk up here. This is a laughable sized front trunk, if you want to call it that, but it's enough for the tire mobility kit and umbrella and some other small stuff, tire repair kit here too. I barely use this, as you guys can see, but it's nice to have, unlike the Volkswagen ID4 that my wife has that doesn't have any usable storage space under the hood. At least Kia made somewhat of an effort to try to give me some storage under there. But really, all in all, when I did all of the measurements and I measured the use case of this car for my family, I found that this one has just enough practicality, just enough cargo area, and frankly more than enough cabin space than we needed. So last but not least, we've got the charge port back here. This is the CCS charge port on the 2024 model year and prior. Again, the new 2025 model year has a NACS charge port, not on this side, but on the driver's side to match Tesla vehicles so it can more conveniently use Tesla superchargers. This car does actually have access to Tesla supercharger network. However, you do need to use a new adapter, the one that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, in order to do so. So we will transition to talking a little bit more about those types of adapters. But first, to summarize, all in all, I've really enjoyed driving this vehicle for the past year. My family really likes this car. Again, super comfortable, super spacious cabin, very practical at least enough for my family's use case. one of the quickest charging and best road trip EVs. So if that's something that's important to you, highly recommend this electric vehicle. And if you're looking to learn more about this electric vehicle, I'm not going to do a full review on it. Again, it's a 2024 model year. I think this car has been reviewed and featured pretty thoroughly on YouTube already. I'll link some of my favorite review videos for the 2024 and 2025 EV6 in the description below if you guys want to check those out to learn more if you're considering getting one of these. But as I said, we're going to wrap up this video here pretty shortly. I'm going to talk to you about one specific problem that I have had with the Kia EV6 2024 model year and my solution for it, and possibly a solution for you if you're considering an EV that doesn't have the NACS. That's the Tesla charge port on the back. How do you use those Tesla superchargers? I'm going to tell you all about that right now. Hey, I've always wanted to do one of those transitions. Anyways, as I'm sitting here editing, I'm actually noticing that I forgot to mention a couple things. Sorry, I'm rusty. First, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 too, I think, have a reputation of being unreliable because of an ICCU failure issue. That's the integrated charging control unit. It controls the charging of the 12-volt battery by the high voltage battery, kind of just the same way that an engine charges the 12-volt battery in a gas car. But if that fails, I guess it can leave you stranded, which of course, bad thing. Don't like that. All 2022 through 2024 EV6s sold in the US are affected by Kia's recall related to this issue. But data from Kia suggests that just 1% of those recalled EV6s have actually experienced some sort of failure related to that ICCU that I mentioned. That's not nothing, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's as bad as some people are suggesting. One of those issues, I think, maybe where people who have experienced this issue are justifiably upset, and maybe their voices are heard louder than most others. Most people who aren't experiencing this problem, of course, aren't going to be reporting on how they're not having this issue on the internet. But hey, I guess we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I will eat my words. Stay tuned to find out. Secondly, we lost the federal EV tax credit this year. How could I not mention that before? Some suggest this spells the end of EVs entirely. I don't quite understand this argument. Not only do EVs exist outside of the US market, but they are thriving outside of the US market. The federal tax credit wasn't the government's way of like forcing people to buy EVs and like shoving them down your throat. I don't understand when people say stuff like that either. But it was the government's way of trying to help us keep up with the rest of the world. Removing that incentive, not mandate, there's never been an EV mandate in the US, it was just a tax incentive, really just ensures that the US automotive market continues to fall further and further behind the rest of the global automotive market. So some people are cheering about this. I don't really understand that either. I understand not liking EVs, but I don't really understand wanting the US automotive market as a whole to fall farther and farther behind the rest of the world. We want to shine. We want to be a leader in the automotive market globally. So that just baffles me. I don't know. Anyways, back to the show. First up is Kia's OEM NACS to CCS adapter. This is Kia's official solution for supercharger access on supported EVs like my EV6 here. It's rated for up to 1000 volts and up to 350 amps. This aligns with the real-world DC fast charging limits of Kia's EVs, including their 800-volt architecture. Build quality is compact and OEM grade, and it's fully supported by Kia when used on approved vehicles. Next up is our first third-party option, the Electron Vortex adapter. This adapter is rated for up to 1000 volts and 500 amps, giving it some additional current headroom compared to Kia's OEM adapter. It supports DC fast charging at Tesla superchargers, where CCS access is enabled, and became a popular early third-party option for CCS drivers like myself. And then lastly is the Electron Vortex Plus, the newly improved version from Electron. Electrically, it matches the original Vortex I just showed you, 1000 volts, 500 amps, so charging capability on paper is the same. The big difference here isn't power delivery, however, it's how the adapter physically secures to the charging cable, which is what we'll get into right now. Until recently, non-Tesla EV owners have had to rely solely on the CCS charging network, which has historically been less reliable and less common here in the United States. Over the past couple of years, though, Tesla has been brokering deals with other automakers to provide their customers with access to their charging network. But to do so, you need one of these adapters. Some automakers provide their customers with them for free, others have them for sale in their parts catalog, and the third option is to go third party. Kia sent me this OEM adapter for free, and it's perfectly capable of charging my EV6 at Tesla superchargers, but it has one flaw. It can be pulled out during a session, either accidentally or intentionally, which immediately stops charging. The first generation Lectron adapter also has this issue. The new and improved Lectron Vortex Plus fixes this. It includes a physical interlocking mechanism that locks the Tesla handle into the adapter during charging, similar to how the native NACS connections work. You can't remove the cable until charging is stopped and released, which adds a real layer of security and peace of mind. If you want more details on the Vortex Plus, I've included a product link in the description below so you can check out current pricing and compatibility. Full disclosure, Lectron sent me this adapter for free to test and try out, but I probably would have bought one anyways. I mean it when I say I've been using Lectron's products since buying my first electric vehicle, and they've never steered me wrong. Go check them out. And with that, I think I've got you guys all caught up since my last video. In the past year or so, there have been a ton of updates in the EV industry as well as in my own personal garage. I have been super busy with work and with being a dad, but you guys know I'm still passionate about electric vehicles, so thanks for hanging in there. In fact, over the past year, I did pick up 2 new electric vehicles that I haven't told you guys about yet. Those are our 2 new electric bikes that are there in the background. If you want to hear more about those, purchasing those actually was not as straightforward as you might think. Let me know in the comment section if you want to see a dedicated video about those. But that's all I have for you guys for today. It's still somehow super hot out here at the end of December, so let me go ahead and turn off this camera. This has been Blake Check. That's a wrap.